On this occasion of Fresno Buddhist Temple's annual observation of fall Ohigan, we are gathered together to adorn the shrine of Amitabha, the Buddha's words. Burn incense, read the sacred writings, and deepen our understanding of the Buddha Dharma. During the spring and fall equinox, when the hours of day and night are equal, the sun symbolically rises in the east and sets in the west towards the direction of the state of enlightenment. We gather to practice the Buddha Dharma as clarified and transmitted to us by Shinran Shoni. This service is combined with Fresno Betsu in September Shotsuki monthly memorial service, and dedicated to all deceased members of this month, with deepest reverence and thankfulness for all embracing wisdom and compassion of the Buddha. Please repeat the Nembutsu after me. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu.
of the Buddha. Now we hear it. If we do not seek the truth of Dharma in this life, in what life shall we find it? Let us fervently take refuge in the three treasures of the truth.
I take refuge in Buddha. May we all together absorb into ourselves the principle of the way of enlightenment and the way within us our highest aspiration. I take refuge in Dharma. May we all together be submerged in the depth of the Dharma and in wisdom as deep as the ocean. I take refuge in Sangha. May we all together become unity in true accord, in the life of family, in the spirit of universal friendship, free from unselfish behavior by taking responsibility.
Even through ages of myriads of kalpas, hard is it to hear such an excellent, profound, and wonderful teaching. Now we are able to hear and receive it. Let us thoroughly understand the true meaning of Nakagawa's teaching. Namo Amida.
Namo Amida.
Namo Amida.
Namo Amida.
I am one of everyone. I am a part of the world. I always receive help and support from others, which is called other power to make my life enjoyable. Although I cannot always be kind and gentle to others, others always help me to make my life enjoyable. How grateful I am that other people's help and support appear here and there to make my life enjoyable. When I feel the kindness of others, saying Namo Amida Butsu becomes my expression of deep gratitude.
Namo Amida. Namo Amida. Namo Amida. Namanda.
Okay, please be seated. You. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
We are here for the fourth Ohigan service. And today we have a guest speaker. And yesterday we have our first in-person seminar after the pandemic. We invite Reverend Kodani, a familiar name. Officially, he is Reverend Kakei Kodani Sensei. Kodani Sensei served BCA 50 years in one temple, Senshin Buddhist temple. We heard the name Reverend Mass equal Senshin Buddhist Church. Then he contributed a lot to the American Buddhism. One thing that I want to notify, he is one of the most influential American-born BC minister last half century. Particularly, I confess, not confess, we have two ministers in Fresno Basin, Reverend Kaz and Masao. Kodani Sensei is a mentor of us. His influence and he motivated young ministers from Japan. And we decided to stay in this country to propagate Buddhism. Not because of Kodani Sensei. Very influential minister. And also, some of you know, he's another thing, culturally, he organized Japanese-American cultural heritage recently. For example, now we have a taiko activity all over, and the Obon Festival is one of the signature of the Buddhist temples. Not because of him. He encouraged to establish those cultural activities. Then his activities recognized Smithsonian Institute already. Yes, he's a legendary minister. I really appreciate it and honor to invite Kodani Sensei and his presence today. There's after the pandemic, at the major service, also first in-person major service, guest speaker. I introduce Reverend Kodani.
Morning. People have told me that since I got older, my voice is getting smaller. So if you can't hear me, just wave your hand or throw something at me so I'll speak louder. Let's see. When Central District has 2 ministers, right? That's a lot of work for 2 ministers. I mean, ministers in other districts are astounded that this whole district is covered by 2 ministers. So please help them as much as you can and give them a day off, a longer day off. It's just the worker for other ministers just really can't believe how much they're working here. So, yoroshiku onegaishimasu. I'd just like to talk today about after 50 years at Senshin, it's just, you get to realize that if you speak English and are Jodo Shinshu, it's very hard to understand. Because English already has a religious vocabulary that's profoundly Christian. So that if you try to use that vocabulary for Buddhist ideas and terminology, it's very misleading. For example, if you say faith in Amida Buddha, right? What does that mean to you? Amida Buddha is like a god, right? How else can you think about it? Right? And faith means what? To believe in, no matter how deeply or profoundly, just to believe in. Both of which have nothing to do with Jodo Shinshu. Right? Amida Buddha is not a god. He did not create the universe, or she did not create the universe, or it did not create the universe. Buddhists are, from a Western point of view, the only religion that is atheistic. We do not believe in a creator God at all. Not only do we not believe in a creator God, we believe the belief in a creator God is not good for you because it causes all kinds of problems. If God created the universe, who created God? And if you say God has always been here, why can't you just say the universe has always been here? Right? If God is all powerful and all loving, how do you explain Los Angeles? Right? In my town, if you open the second page of the newspaper, every day there's murder, killings, robberies, and cruelty of the most unimaginable kind. If God is all loving, he cannot be all powerful. He does not stop it. If he is all powerful and he allows it to happen, he cannot be all loving. This dilemma, the Buddha in his lifetime makes this statement. Therefore, how can there be an all-powerful, loving God? Amida does not qualify in any of these definitions. Right? I don't know how else to explain it, but maybe this might help. Amida Buddha did not create the universe. Amida Buddha is the universe. Okay? And you don't pray to the universe, do you? You pray if you want something. And you pray to something who you think can provide you with what you want. This is why in our creed, prayer is forbidden. You are forbidden to pray. Why? Because it encourages the idea that somebody out there can get you out of the mess you created for yourself. And you cannot do that. If you messed up, enjoy being stuck in it. If you want to get out of it, you have to get out of it. Nothing's going to change that for you. Right? So Buddhism is pretty brutal in that sense. It's saying, no, There is no such thing as that. Right? So what does it say? It divides everything into samsara, which I think you've heard, and nirvana, right? So samsara means our world, our everyday world, right? Where we use your most objective minds to think about things, to feel about things, subject and object. So that what's out there is real and separate from you here, all right? And that's our normal world. So, because we think that's true, we always say, Sensei, for this seminar, can we use the theme, how do you apply Buddhism to your everyday life? It comes up over and over again. I've been asked that every year for 50 years. How do you apply Buddhism to your everyday life? I finally think I can answer that. You can't. You can't apply Buddhism to your everyday life. Buddhism is saying your everyday life is a fake. Right? How can you apply that? And how helpful is it to be told you're a fake? Buddhists believe it's very helpful. Because you think this is for real. And yet you cannot tell me what this is. Right? Well, my first year in Kyoto University, a professor had created a special class for foreign students because we didn't speak Japanese that well, and he spoke English fairly well. So he mixed Japanese and English for this Buddhist philosophy class. And he did this strange thing. He called out every student and said, okay, Kodani, what are you? I said, what? He said, what are you? And I said, I'm a sansei. I'm third generation Japanese. Right? He says, this whole classroom is full of sanseis. I'm not asking you what the group is called. What are you? Right? And I've always been a kind of a smartass. So I told the teacher, I'm my mother's son. Right? And he said, I didn't ask you how you're related to some woman. What are you? I said, well, who or what? Same thing, he says. Okay? And he keeps doing this over and over again with every student. So it took half the semester to ask every student that. And anything you ask, he destroys. Right? Because whatever you answer comes under one of two categories. I tell you what this does. It's talking. I'm a minister. I talk a lot. So I tell you what I do. It's not what I am, right? Or I tell you how I'm related to somebody else, a fellow minister. Right? So whenever you answer, you tell me what you do or how you're related to somebody else. But you can never tell me what you are. And the professor said, guess what the final question is going to be? Right? And so after class, we'd always go get a beer or something. It was a nerve-wracking class. Right? But we got together and we finally figured out what he was getting at. Right? And here's the answer. Right? You cannot tell me who or what you are for a very simple reason. There is no such thing as you. And yet you insist that there is. That deep down there's an essential Masao here, something running around. And there isn't. Right? That happened 55 years ago. Right? That Masao Kodani is completely gone. And this one here is a completely different person. And when I get in the car and drive back to LA, it's another completely different person. I can't tell you what survives. The Buddha says nothing survives. You're constantly changing. Physically, we know that's true. And Buddhism says in every way, in thought and memory and energy, everything is constantly changing and is never the same. Therefore, Buddhists do not believe in an eternal soul. If you don't have a soul, you cannot have reincarnation. Buddhists do not believe in reincarnation. Right? Americans love it that they think we believe in reincarnation. Because they always say, yes, in my past life I was Cleopatra.
or a king. Right? There were garbage collectors in the past too. Why can't you be incarnated with a garbage collector? No, you have to be Cleopatra. Right? It's just a toy. It's a game. And Buddhism says reincarnation. No, you cannot have it. If there is no God, there cannot be a soul either. So what is Buddhism about then? There's nothing. I haven't said anything religious yet in the English language. But in Buddhism, in Japanese Buddhism, for example, everything I've talked about is religious. So we haven't established an English vocabulary yet to completely convey what Buddhism is about. And that's the difficult part of it. All of you here, if you, like me, if you were born and raised in America, fundamentally you're Christian. Your thought is Christian, your attitude is Christian, and our values are Christian. If you are Jodo Shinshu, then your job is how to differentiate the two and how to become more Buddhist than the Christian I am. Okay? For example, if you're sick, I'll say, well, I'll pray for you. We can't do that. Right? It's just not done. Right? So I have good thoughts about you, maybe we'll say. Right? Another thing, you have to have a strong sense of self. You have to have a strong identity. This is a dangerous thing in Buddhism, because it's saying that identity is not real. So why should it reinforce that non-real identity? It's to go the opposite direction. How do I realize that there's nothing here outside of my connection to everything else? Right? You can't say, I'm a self-made man. Right? A self-made man is an ungrateful, self-centered egomaniac. His mother and father produced him and raised him, and what he thinks and feels and values was connected to his parents, his friends, his community. Right? Can you tell me where east is? The spot east. Is there such a place? Then why are we talking? Why do we use that word? There's no such thing as east. It's because it's not real, but it's useful. Right? Because I'm in a hotel over there, and if I drove west to come here, it would take a couple of years. Right? I'd have to go all the way around the world and come out from the east. So directions are useful. Think about it. If you're standing at the North Pole, right, and you take a step anywhere, you're going south, right? Right? There is no, right? There's no east and west. It's because we're lined up in a polar way. So if you're standing on north, everything is south. So you say, okay, you want to go to America, go south. You could be heading in the wrong direction, but it's still south. Right? So what does all this mean, right? You agree that words then are only temporarily real, and they're useful to life and comfort and getting around. Do you agree? Be careful how you answer this. Do you agree that's true? Because if you do, the next question in Buddhism is, okay, then what are you? How real are you? You're no more real than the word north. Masao is just a word that describes this collection of atoms. That's it. Right? So if I'm no more real than north, why do I ignore that fact? I think I'm not only real, I'm the center of the universe. You guys may have trouble and be bad and ignorant, and me too, but not quite as bad as me. I'm wonderful. Right? Right? And so the Buddha says, Siddhartha was only concerned with one problem. Why do we suffer? That's all he thought about. And he discovered the answer. Right? We suffer because we are attached to things that are not real, but consider them real. And we can't let it go. Right? So, I love you all equally, but not quite as much as me. It's me, and if I have time for you, it's still me. Right? Basically, that Buddha is saying, that attachment is so strong, suffering is unavoidable. So how do you get rid of this, right? And you know the story of Shakyamuni, when he first became enlightened, he went, wow, when he did it, it took him 49 days. He enjoyed his enlightenment for 49 days and thought about it, right? And after 49 days, he concluded, there's no use telling other people about it. It's too hard to explain, and it's too hard to understand, so I'm just not going to do it. Right? But the more he thought about it, by the 49th day, it says, he felt compelled to teach what he understood. Why? Because what he understood was everything was interconnected. If everything is interconnected, how can he enjoy it by himself? Right? His enjoyment depended upon being connected to everybody else. And that's why Buddhism begins. Right? So it's not to understand connectedness or oneness. That's not the purpose of Buddhism. It's to talk about it so that there comes a point where you experience oneness. You experience what it means that everything is interconnected. So thinking about it is good, but it's not what bodhi means. Bodhi means to wake up. And this is why English does not have a term for bodhi. They translate it enlightenment. This is a very misleading term. Because what does enlightenment mean? I understand everything, right? This is not true. This is not what bodhi means. Bodhi means to be wide awake, right? So if you're self-centered and you suddenly see that, you're wide awake. You may still be self-centered, but you're wide awake about it. Right? If you really think about it, I'm not so bright. I'm kind of stupid. You're wide awake. Right? Or you can say, you're really not bright, but you say, I'm really smart. I'm really smart. Right? That's really dumb. Okay? So it's talking about a different area of things. It's not talking about your normal life. It's talking about your real life that we have not yet experienced. Nirvana means without ego. Right? So nirvana means our normal life without ego. And if you have a normal life without ego, that's nirvana. Right? And if you wake up to that, you're a Buddha, somebody who woke up. Right? So Shakyamuni Buddha was a Buddha. He woke up to what was going on. We are Buddhists. Why? Because we don't understand that. Right? So if you're a Buddhist, you're on your way to understanding, but you're still a dumbbell, basically. Right? So Buddhism, as far as I know, is the only religion that strives to understand how stupid we are. If you start off trying to understand how stupid you are, why would you want to fight with somebody else saying, you have to be as stupid as I am? Makes no sense. It's only religions who think they are right that get into fights all the time. And for your sake, I'm right, and for your sake, I'll kill you. Stupid. Right? If a dumbbell meets another dumbbell, it's very friendly. Right? If a superior person meets who they think is inferior, it's not friendship at all. Right? This is why Jodashin, it's better you be aho, it's better to be stupid. You'll probably understand, you'll probably wake up sooner if you're stupid. Smart people, man, it takes longer. Why? Because they can figure out a way to explain why they're not self-centered. Right? It wasn't me, it was Sensei's fault. If you're dumb, you're not smart enough to say that. So you say, oh, I guess I am. Right? So stupid people are friendlier people. They're more real people. They're easier to work with. They're easier to cooperate with. So Jodo Shinshu is the fine art of learning how stupid we are. If you're stupid, you got nothing but up. If you're on the top, you're on your way down. There's no other direction. There is no other direction, right? So I gotta be me. No, you don't. Forget you, right? I didn't grow up in a Japanese neighborhood, by the way. I grew up in a place called Watts, right, in LA. And so all the way through high school, all my friends, everybody I knew, was black. So I grew up in a black neighborhood. I grew up in our neighborhood. There were 3 Japanese families. Everyone else is black. And so in high school, we were referred to as the 3 lemon drops in the sea of raisins. But I grew up in that way. And so I'm most comfortable to this day. I'm still most comfortable in a black group. But when I went to college, I went to UC Santa Barbara, which is an all-white college at the time. Right? And for the first 2 months in the dorm, people would come to my room, knock on the door and say, "Welcome to UC Santa Barbara." I've been there 2 months, right? I'm going, why are these people coming welcoming me? And it suddenly occurred to me, they're coming because black English was coming out of this kind of face. And it was weird to them. So they just wanted to hear it, right? And so then I started to learn, I guess, standard English very quickly. But I didn't know I was speaking black English. It was the English I use all the time. And so it's that kind of thing. It's connected to everything around you, right? So a Buddha is somebody who wakes up to the fact that my need to be in control of everything is what's making me suffer. I need to ignore that and see that I'm connected to everything. Right? And the Mahayana also says, wherever there is a person like that, it affects his entire surroundings. Right? Whoever he comes in contact with is affected by that point of view. So, wherever there's a Buddha, there is a land free of ego. Hence the word pure land. Right? And pure land is not a place. It is not a heaven you go to after you die and live forever. At all. Think about it. You want to live forever? Long time maybe. 100 years max. But forever? And you want to be with that person forever? Right? I would like to be 18, but not with that 18-year-old brain, right? I would be okay with what I am now, but not with this body, right? I mean, you can't pick and choose. Forever is not really desirable at all, right? And it's not even realistic, right? So Mahayana Buddhism is concerned of what is this really, right? And it has nothing to say about what is it. When you say really, it says, you know, everything outside of you, that altar, it's not out there, right? And your friends, they're not out there, they're in here. You created them that way, right? This is why this person sees this altar differently from that person. It has to be, because you're over there and you're over here. Or you're raised with a certain attachment to a certain color and you're repulsed by that same color. It's not the color's fault, it hasn't changed at all. What's changed? How you would receive it and react to it. Right? So everything out there, Buddhism said, one school of philosophy says, there's nothing out there. Everything you see in the universe is in here. And you created it. Right? The other school of Buddhism says, any statement you say can be reduced to absurdity in 18 moves. Any statement you make is only sort of true and useful, like north, south, but there's no solid reality to it at all. So why are you so attached to what you think is real, right? That same professor said, Buddhism is very simple. It's to look at what you really look like, and I'm going to show you. And that's what he did. Right? And he says, what do you think? And we said, Sensei, that's kind of creepy. And he said immediately, he says, why? That's what you look like. Isn't that interesting? Why? That's what you really look like. And that's why Buddhism is so difficult. You don't want to see that. Right? But Mahayana Buddhism is saying, trust me, if you see that, you're going to be fine. You're going to be really okay. So don't run from it. This is why Buddhism can tell you what you are not. It cannot tell you what you are. Because if I say that you're this, then that has to be what you're not that. But if you want to see the real truth about everything, it has to include not that, right? So Buddhism says you can't think objectively. You can't think dualistically, subject and object, as two separate things. Right? These are separate, but at the same time, they're the same thing. And they're influenced by each other. Right? This is called non-dualism. And Buddhism, as far as I know, is the only religion that is non-dualistic. Maybe Taoism together. It's saying reality is not either or. Right? It's either and. Right? So it divides it. For example, samsara is nama, me. Our world, our normal world as we know it. Amitabha, Amida Buddha is nirvana. Right? So we think, okay, I go from here to here. No. Right? It's to wake up to what this is and see that it includes this. Right? So reality is Namo Amitabha. It's one word, made up of two opposite things, me and reality. I have to be a part of that reality. Otherwise, there is no Amida. Without me, there's no Amida. Without Amida, there's no me. No God-centered religion can make this statement. God-centered religions mean the Creator would be here regardless if you're here or not. And that's not true in Buddhism. Without me or you, there is no such thing as Amida. But if you wake up to the fact that this is kind of a temporary thing, like north, south, east, and west. And that most of the time I'm saying, no, that's not true, I'm me. Right? So we're kind of a fake. To see that is to see this. Right? That moment is called shinjin in Japanese. And shinjin does not mean this deep moment of faith when you see the light and there's music everywhere. It doesn't mean that at all. And it's so hard to explain that Renyo Shonin gives us good advice. He says, if you have that moment, keep it to yourself. Don't tell anybody about it. Right? Because why? Because if you have that moment, you're going to say, see, I got it. And you don't got it, but I got it. Your head just gets fat. Right? Nothing happens. You just get a big head of it. Right? So it says, be careful. This is tricky stuff. Okay. To give you an idea of what that might mean is, I did this in the study class, but how many of you play a musical instrument? Right? What? What?
The
Drums? Okay. Okay. All right. So I'm assuming you practice a lot, right? So you practice and you practice to get this right. Right? And so you memorize the piece. And you probably can play pretty well. But it's not about this. It's not really playing. Really playing is you practice it till you know it cold. And then when you perform, forget about it. Completely forget about it. Right? And if you do, you will play, and in that moment, the music that you're trying to play for so long will play you. Do you understand what I mean? There's a moment where you're almost unconscious. And it's easy. It's so easy and so beautiful until you recognize it and it's gone. And you say, hey, I'm playing good. No, you're not. It just ended. Right? So the moment you're unconsciously playing, you're also at the same time conscious of everything coming together. The music is playing me. Right? The piano is playing me. I play the piano until and if I forget about it, all of a sudden, it's so easy. It's that moment of connection on a much smaller scale, but it's that moment of connection. And the minute you become conscious of it, it has to be over because you have to separate yourself from it to observe it. If you separate yourself from it, it's gone. Right? So it's this momentary thing. But all of you have had an experience of that kind somewhere, somehow. Right? Mahayana Buddhists love this one fact, and that is humming. Have you ever caught yourself humming? Right? You can't say, I'm going to hum. It's just that when you're doing something and not thinking about it, and it's pleasant, you go, you don't sing words, you just hum. Right? This is also close to that moment. Just humming. You say, okay, I'm going to hum. It doesn't work that way. Humming is a product of you forgetting yourself. So you say, okay, so I'm going to hum so it'll happen. It won't happen. That's why it's difficult. You have to forget yourself in order to connect. So you say, okay, I'll forget myself, then I'll connect, right? No. Because you want that. Your ego wants that to happen. And your ego cannot be there. And your ego has to take a vacation. You can't kill the ego. You shouldn't. But it has to take a vacation. And the vacation is forgetting about yourself. Me. This has affected the Japanese so much, it affects their language. Right? If at all possible, in Japanese, the subject and object are not important. What's important? The verb is important. Okay, so if you say, I love you. Okay, these days, how do you say I love you in Japanese? Anybody? I love you in Japanese. Okay, when I studied Japanese, the teacher asked me, okay, how do you say I love you? So I said, Watashi wa anata wo aishiteru. And he said, that's a funny. Watashi means I, and anata means you. And in Japanese, the verb is last, like German. So I, you, love, right? He says, that's okay, but no Japanese would say that. Right? Watashi wa anata wo aishiteru. I said, if it makes sense, why wouldn't they say that? Because he says it sounds icky. Right? So when I got to Japan, one of my fellow students, Japanese fellow students, I said, what does this sound like to you? Watashi wa anata wa aishiteru. So I said, why? He said, I don't know, it doesn't sound right. I said, well, what does it feel like then when I say that? And he thought about it, and he said, okay, this is what it feels like. I love you. That's what it sounds like in Japanese. So how do you say I love you? You leave out I and you say aishiteru. Just the verb. Right? Think about this, it's important, right? If you use just the verb, right? I and you disappear. What remains? Loving remains. But if you say I and you, loving disappears. Right? So Japanese say it's better to describe what's happening than who's doing it to who. Those are irrelevant. Right? So just love. Right? Loving taking place. Right? This affects everything. I think, therefore I am? No. It says, I'm thinking, therefore I am. It's a very different point of view. Right? I'm thinking, therefore I am. Loving taking place, right? That's so cool. Loving taking place, right? Instead of I love you. Right? That's a business proposition. Right? So he says, once it's a business proposition, loving will disappear very quickly. Right? And so, Buddhism really is awakening to the fact that we are verbs. We are not nouns. And yet, English, we are nouns doing something. We are nouns verbing, right? In Buddhism, we are verbs given various names at various times, in various combinations. And so it's better to think of yourself as a verb. And if you're a verb, you don't need to have me, you, versus, etc., etc. And that's the great difference between Buddhism and Western religion. Western religion, what is out here is real. And its creator, religion is the relationship between the created and the creator, like this. And since the created cannot become the creator, the relationship must be one of faith, of belief only, right? If you're saying you have to discover the verb, you have to have that moment where the music plays you, the dance plays you, everything dances you, right? It's not a belief. You're actually doing it. You're participating. So faith is useless in Buddhism. So the problem then becomes, how do we get there, right? The ego can't get there by itself. It's not going to, right? It's like pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. We all believe in this, right? When you think about it, it's a stupid statement. How can you pull yourself up by your bootstraps if you're wearing your boots? Right? And if you're not wearing your boots, what are we talking about, right? So on one hand, on the normal world, pulling yourself up by your bootstraps makes sense, right? From the nirvana point of view, it's stupid. It's ridiculous, right? So we have two sets of valuing things, our normal world and then our natural world, and they're opposite. And yet they're connected, they're the same. So the Buddhist half of it saying, you don't have to be you. You're a fake anyway. You just have to see you're a fake, and then you'll be fine. Right? It's only when you say, I'm not a fake, I'm sincere, at least more than you. But you're already in the fight. Right? And I'm not seeing this at all. Right? But I was saying, yeah, that was really stupid. You know? I catch myself doing this all the time. If you're honest about it, it affects the other person because it's okay for them to agree with you, that they too do the same thing. And if they too do the same thing, it's a lot easier to work with. Right? This is why, in order to, we always get sense that you don't have to go to church to be Joba Shinshu. Yes, you do. Because unless you do it here, you're not going to understand this at all. Right? And everything that happens here is like my temple. It's confusing. Not only is it confusing, it should be uncomfortable at first. If you think about the first time you chanted, kind of weird, right? And uncomfortable. You're worried about how people are going to look at you, whether you're on the right pitch or not. You're really uncomfortable, right? Why? Your ego does not want to look bad. So, but then you learn it. So as soon as you learn it well, your ego takes over again. You flaunt it. Right? You can't win. And that's what it's for. That's what it's for. When Shinran Shonin decided that you do not have to be a monk to understand Buddhism, right? And left, right? He disrupted Buddhism for the first time in its history. Even today, Buddhist Sangha does not mean you. It means monks. The order of monks and nuns. So you say, I take refuge in the Sangha. It means I take refuge in the Buddhist monks and nuns. Right? When Shinran comes along, it says, it doesn't work for them as much, and the same way it doesn't work for us. Right? So he leaves, and he openly marries. It's unheard of. He openly marries. Right? And what he's saying is that it does not take this specialized kind of training to become a Buddha. Because seeing your ego and letting it go applies to everybody. And that's the crucial issue. Not how many sutras you can read, how many sutras you can chant, and so forth. But in the monastic period, somebody had to build those monasteries, and they were called lay people. They weren't called Buddhists, they were called lay people, right? And they built these huge monasteries and temples, right? And very soon, these lay people were thinking, well, what do I get out of this, right? If I can't become enlightened, what do I get out of donating? And when that happens, the idea of gaining merit begins. Well, you may not be enlightened in this life, but in the next life, you'll have enough merit that maybe you'll become a priest in the next life, which already defies reincarnation, that there is no reincarnation. Right? Okay? So, not only that, the rituals that the monks perform, you can benefit from. So all the monastic schools have rituals that bring rain, avoid disasters, bring wealth, health, and happiness. Right? The power to do that. And that's why lay people went and supported the temples. When Shinran erases that, it changes the meaning of ritual for us. Right? You can chant here all you want. It's not going to scare away the guy who's dating your daughter. Right? Or it's not going to cure you of anything. Right? At all. It has no power to do that. So what's it for? It's to make you uncomfortable enough to look at yourself. Right? And everyone agrees. At first chanting, it's uncomfortable. And then what do you do when you get used to it? You flaunt it. Right? You see your ego in yet another way. This also happens with Bodhi. Right? You don't want to look stupid, so you come to practice. And if you don't come to practice, you come to old Bodhi, you're hesitant because you don't want to make a mistake. Right? Either case, it's your ego, right? Right? Because if you know the dance, what do? You wear your, killer yukata and show off. Right? And if you don't, you go, like this. It's still ego, in any case. What you have to do is forget that and just dance. Right? So it holds true with Waburi, it holds true with Taiko. Right? Most people want to play Taiko to impress people and wow them over. You say, thank you. Buddhist Taiko is that opposite. Is to be able to have enough ability that you could forget it. And when you forget it, you suddenly notice the other taiko player. And when you notice the other taiko player, they notice you. And you're playing as a group. And when you play as a group, you don't have to memorize anything. You already know it. It moves in a different way. And the taiko plays you. That moment is magic, and every audience can tell the difference. They can. Right? So it's that area of when it plays you. The ultimate of that is you need to say Namo Amida Butsu. I know we're all embarrassed to say it because you only say it when Sensei says it, or I say it. Namanda, 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 namanda. Any Pavlovian dog can do this. Right? You need to say it yourself and out loud. Why? To show you again your ego. So what do? You say, okay. Naman, naman, naman. Then what do? You flaunt it. No mondo, right? Again, you can't win. So our ritual is designed for one powerful purpose, to show you your ego and to say, look at it, and you will not be disappointed. You'll be disgusted at what you see, but the seeing will free you suddenly and bring those two worlds together. So you say Namandawasu until the time Namandawasu says you. And that's the ultimate point of doing it. But you must do it. And this is why one kanji appears in Jodo Shinshu sermons and writings all the time. It's the kanji tada, yui. Right? And it means simply or just. Right? So it says, when you're doing bodori, tada odoru, just dance. Don't think about, well, what happens, what happens psychologically, emotionally. Just dance. Right? And if you just dance, that moment where it is dancing you, right, the dance is dancing you, it's only at that moment that you will remember the purpose of Obon is to remember the dead. Right? And if you remember the dead in that context, your question, what happens when you die, becomes silly. The question becomes silly, the answer becomes silly. You already know what it means to be connected to the dead. But you will not think of the dead on your own. Why? The ego is too busy trying to look good and trying to avoid embarrassment. So if you just dance, when that moment happens, magic happens. You suddenly remember the dead. And what you're really remembering is, if it weren't for those people, I would not be what I imagined myself to be at this moment and at this time. So, you cannot use manning the booth as an excuse for not dancing. You must dance. I could say this because talk is cheap. Senshin has never had border together with the carnival. It's always been separate. So if you do that, the question, why are we doing this, becomes immediate. So we've always been aware of why we dance. Right? But if you're at a carnival, you can avoid that embarrassment by saying, oh, I gotta man the booth. So the very people who need to dance, who maintain this temple, right, don't. And if there comes a time, in Southern California it's coming very quickly, that the carnivals will no longer bring in the kind of money that sustains the temple. We have to find other sources of income. Unless you're dancing at that time, when carnival disappears, Bodori also will disappear. Because you have no one to do it. Right? So get people who are not interested in Buddhism, have them man the booth. And dance. It's really important to dance. Just forget embarrassment. Just dance. Right? Tada odoru. Tada okyo o tonaeru. Just chant. Right? But I don't understand it. Trust me, no Buddhist country understands it like what you're chanting in. It's all dead language. Right? Southeast Asia, they chant in Pali. Pali is dead language. They don't know what they're chanting. Right? In China, it's in classical Chinese, which very few people can read. In Japan, it's written in Chinese. Right? Understanding what it says is not the purpose of it. It's trying to get you out of that box that if you go to understand it in your head, you're in control of it and therefore you're okay. It's trying to shake up that idea. So trust it. Just chant. Right? And you say, oh, it wasn't so bad. And then you start flaunting. Then you're back to where you started. And you keep doing this. Burning incense. Right? Burning incense is really interesting. It says, senko, incense, does not come to life until you light it. Right? So it comes to life. At that instant, it's dying. Right? So, burning incense represents this world in which birth and death are simultaneous events. It's not in sequence. The normal world, you're born, you live and die. In the real world, it's instantaneous. Right? If you think everything is impermanent, that's what it means. Right? Born dead, born dead, born dead, born dead, born dead. It's instantaneous. But we don't look at it that way. I'm born, I'm going to live, and I'm going to die. That's why dying is so terrifying. Right? But those who have had, what? All of us who have experience of the dance dancing you, the chanting you, the shoko in you, right? It's easier to talk about death. Our group is the only group that I know of that makes jokes about death all the time. And our young people do as well, right? In 1970, I was invited to speak at a junior YB conference in Southern District. In those days, it was big. It was 1,200 people at a hotel, right? 1,200 juniors. So I said, okay, before I make my talk, I want to ask you one question. Just shout out your answer. One word is good enough, right? And I said, ready? And they said, yeah. So I said, what's the most fun part about a funeral? And everybody shouted. It was a roar. It was instant. Guess what they said? Anybody? Chinese food! Right? Because after a funeral, you go out and eat Chinese food. Right? One guy said, Kakei, which means sweet and sour pork. He named the dish, right? And so the conference, the workshops were about the funeral ritual and what it meant, and how it's good to talk about death. Why? If you talk about death, you become vibrantly alive. If you're trying to avoid death or talk about death, you're not living, you're existing. Right? And death, the face of death, can wake you up like nothing else can. And we joke about it all the time. And people who come in and see it for the first time, they just think there's something wrong with us. And I guess there is in that way. Right? So it's about that moment in which what you are doing sucks you in and makes you a part of the entire thing. Where the dance dances you, the song sings you, the music plays you. That moment, which is very short, because in order to be conscious of it, you must separate yourself, and it's gone. Right? And then your ego takes over and says, but I had that moment, so I'm better than you. No. And that's all we're about. That's all we're about. We have no ethical system at all. You say, well, without a God, you can't be ethical and behave properly. We have no ethical system at all in Buddhism. What does the Buddha say on how to live? They don't say anything. Right? But I would put this group against any other group in terms of crime, that kind of thing. Where it's pretty low, right? Without benefit of somebody threatening you punishment if you do bad. It's not about that. It is, what is a human being? What is the core of a human being? And from that core, how do you act to other human beings? Right? So the Buddha created that lantern, which is not hanging because there's a problem with the chain. But Shakyamuni Buddha, while he was alive, had thousands of disciples. So they had to split the groups up. It was too cumbersome. So at night, monks would communicate with each other by walking to the other groups at night. So Shakyamuni said, let's make a lantern. He made a lantern out of bamboo and put paper on it to carry. And so the disciples said, so they could see their way at night, right? And he said, no. It's so you don't step on any living thing by accident. So that to this day, that lantern is a symbol of ahimsa, the non-harming of any living thing. Right? But it's a very Buddhist point of view about it. Because it says, if you're alive at the expense of killing something. It doesn't matter whether it's an animal or a vegetable, you're killing it. Right? Therefore, you've already broken the rule. But that's not the point of the rule. The point of the rule is to minimize harming any living thing. Therefore, if you kill something, an animal, or pull out a vegetable from the ground to eat it, right? Don't be wasteful. Right? Why? Because it's, everybody, mottai nai. Right? Mottai nai literally means it is not in accordance with reality.
Reverend Kodani, could you write
Yes,
it?
okay.
Thank you.
It's not in accordance with reality, and therefore Everything in nature recycles, and therefore you must be careful, not waste anything. So mottainai also means clearing your garage out. You have to recycle. You can't store it there forever. Anyway, that's all we talk about in Jodo Shinshu. It's a very different territory. Right? And it's because we are not a creator God religion at all. At all.